Welcome to the GPLama YouTube channel, and today one of the most anticipated smart trainers has launched, the Zwift Hub. Zwift's $499 US direct drive interactive smart trainer based quietly on the Jet Black Volt version 2. Now this has been one of the most talked about trainers since its announcement 4 weeks ago. All of the technical details of this trainer are known. I'll put links in the video description to my introductory video and also to my video covering off 15 things that you need to know about the Zwift Hub if you're looking at purchasing one. However, we were asked to hold back on the deep dive data analysis until launch day as they finalize the firmware. Today the gloves come off and we find out how the trainer really performs when put to the test. In the last month, I've ridden multiple units and I've even looped back to the Jet Black Volt and also what I would call a market equivalent, the Kickr Core, to perform some comparative tests on. The Lama lab test protocol that I use has been extended or improved to really drill down on this trainer to see how it performs. And I've even taken the time to visit the team behind the hub in the UK. So there is a lot to cover today. Okay, kicking off at a high level, the Zwift Hub. Now they say the aim of this product is to grow the pie or grow the market, to make getting into indoor cycling, specifically Zwift of course, easier. To remove the complexity of choosing which trainer, which cassette, which bike adapters, getting everything all set up. And all of this at a price point that really caught our attention, $499 US. The hardware specifications of the Hub put it right in the middle of the mid-range offerings out there, but at a budget price point, and that's what caught our attention. Paying this much for hardware that gives us this mid-range experience, that would be a game changer. Mid-range direct drive trainers are usually good enough for the majority of riders out there. Maximum wattages that will never hit, so 1800 watts, maximum gradient 16%, and power accuracy range is around 2.5%. That's going to be fine, assuming those specifications hold true and the trainer is reliable. The Kickr Core has proven that since its launch 4 years ago with those specifications, although it does have plus or minus 2% power accuracy listing versus 2.5 on the Zwift Hub. So the big question today is, does the Zwift Hub perform like a mid-level smart trainer? And that's exactly what I'll cover in this video. Now, before taking a deep dive into the numbers, my quick take on everything else. The unboxing experience is fantastic. The setup is easy, the documentation is great, everything is color-coded, and all the tools are supplied. It has universal compatibility with all software platforms out there, with its support for ANT+ FEC and Bluetooth FTMS. So this is going to work with Zwift, TrainerRoad, System, RGT, Ruby, and anything else that uses those protocols. You don't have to have a paid Zwift subscription to use this trainer. The ride feel in sim mode is good. The gradient changes are prompt and not laggy. Erg mode for workouts is stable, and those changes in set points of different wattages was great when used in the correct gear. The Zwift Hub is stable in sprints. I was unable to spin out the flywheel or slip the belt. The data quality that I got from the trainer was great. I had no signal drops with ANT+ power or ANT+ speed and cadence, and Bluetooth FTMS was solid. It is a silent operation. Your drivetrain will be louder, your fans will be louder, and your music should definitely be louder than this trainer. The build quality is excellent. The flywheel was balanced. I had no vibrations at high speeds across multiple units. Reliability, I'm going to have to mark that one as good for now, based purely on the fact that I haven't broken one of these trainers yet. The real test will be when they start shipping tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of trainers out on the market. The Hub estimates cadence from your pedaling power phase and does a pretty good job. I found it to be within 1 to 2 RPM of my on-bike power meters, but there's always going to be some edge cases where the resistance backs off and there's no power on the pedals for it to estimate that cadence. It'll take 1 or 2 seconds to come back into line. That's the same with pretty much every other trainer that does this. The power accuracy of this trainer, look, just covering it off lightly before going deep down the rabbit hole for the rest of the video on power, it's going to suffice for most people if you're just clipping in and going for a ride, say with Coco Cadence or any other bunch ride on Zwift. It'll also perform pretty well if you're jumping on and doing an erg mode session for say 30 to 40 minutes of varying zones. The trainer itself takes about 5 to 10 minutes to warm up for the power to come into spec. That does depend how long your warm up is, and from there, depending on your efforts you're doing, things will be okay. But if you're putting out big power numbers, if you're doing long sustained erg efforts, or you love the pain of grinding up steep hill repeats on Zwift, there's a few things you'll need to know about the performance that I've encountered in these conditions. Okay, now to dig very deep on how this trainer performs when really put to the test. That test, the Lama lab test protocol, is my own test that I've developed that covers a wide range of usage scenarios from steady state erg intervals, over-unders, peak power, sim gradient response, among a number of other things. It has successfully identified the good, the bad, the ugly of smart trainers and power meters over the years, And I know Zwift have used a very, very similar protocol to test the hub. So, to keep them honest, I've changed it or improved it. So they can't just develop a trainer that's going to pass the Lama lab test. Look, as I mentioned, the power accuracy from the hub is relatively fine if you keep within what I call the optimal working zones of flywheel speed and system temperature. I'm now calling this zone the Goldilocks zone, where a trainer isn't too hot, isn't too cold, and that flywheel speed isn't too fast or isn't too slow. All indoor trainers from budget to high end have an optimal working zone, but what differentiates the trainers is how narrow that zone is and how they perform when they're outside those zones, including how they deal with big variations in system temperature. So with that said, the following data analysis is from a production Zwift hub unit with firmware version 3.9. I have around 25 hours of comparative test data, which has been consistent with the results that you'll see summarized today. I'm confident with the numbers coming from the bike power meters. They've been put through hundreds and hundreds of hours of testing. The bike itself is also meticulously maintained for the exact purpose of testing power meters and smart trainers. From the bottom bracket, the jockey wheels, the chain which has been run in and waxed, and I also run a straight chain line in erg mode in the same gear every time. The recording devices are all kept similar to ensure there is no issues across vendors in how they record and store that data. There can be slight variances with that. And all of this could change at any time with the future firmware update on the trainer. Alrighty, jumping over to my favorite website on the internet, the DCR Analyzer tool, where we can compare multiple power meters as an overlay and see how they stack up. Now, let's take a really, really big step back here on what we're seeing. 182, 181, 180. So we have the PowerMax and G-Co on the bike, Asioma Duos on the bike, and the Zwift hub. Those numbers at a high level are looking really, really good. 10-minute warm-up. We'll dive straight into that. Through Titans Grove. We can see just a slight variation through here as the trainer warms up, comes into its own after about 4 or 5 minutes, and things look pretty good from here on in, just riding along. As expected, so 214, 214, and because the trainer just took a little while to warm up, 205 on that. A spin down was performed right here on the trainer when it was warm. Also a zero offset performed on both power meters. Jumping now to the 200 and 250 watt steady state for 10 minutes. And again, overall, 226, 225, 224, numbers are looking brilliant, but you can see a trend on screen here where the Zwift hub as the control believes it's doing 200 all the way along and 250. The power meters on the bike report slightly less wattage at the end of the 200, and there's a bit of a change here. You can't really see it with this smoothing, but it's just slightly occurring here by 1 to 2 watts. So there's a slight movement in power for a sustained effort. Now, similar to what I've seen with the Jet Black Volt, with the thermal drift issues that I saw on that. Sprints looking pretty good, nothing really to note there. Numbers were good, slight difference there in the recording time, but within a few watts plus or minus. Into the overs and unders, 20 seconds at 150, 350, 150 and up to the 450s. Again, all looking good there, ticking boxes, 149, 149, 150. That includes a little section here of just riding along. But the erg set point changes were nice and quick. Stabilization wasn't too bad, and the overall experience there for the overs and unders ticks all the boxes, looking good. Now onto the flywheel speed test, which is an interesting one which can reveal other areas to look into on a trainer. So what I do is set the trainer to 225 watts erg mode. I then put the bike in the easiest gear that I have, little ring on the front, 30 on the back, and then every 90 seconds I change the flywheel speed to keep that erg zone exactly the same and try and keep the cadence the same as well. So at a slow flywheel speed, the trainer works pretty well at what I would call lower wattage for a workout or an interval here, 225 watts, working pretty well. When I spin that flywheel up to what I call a higher flywheel speed, because we've covered off the mid-range flywheel speed in the 200 and 250 watts, the trainer is under-reporting a little bit versus what I'm doing on the bike. You can see through there. It's not too far off, probably around 10 watts or so difference, but it's when I put the bike in the big ring on the front, really spin that flywheel up super fast, things really do fall apart with this trainer. Most trainers do fail this section right here, but this one fails it in quite an interesting way. It over-reports massively. By massively, I mean about 40 to 50 watts difference with what I'm putting on the pedals and what the trainer is reporting that it is doing. Now, you should never be doing erg in the 5311 or 5212 or anything like that, but this is interesting. It shows that the trainer does have some issues at higher flywheel speeds, and that's something that I'll be digging into a little further on. Then we have some just riding along into what I'm now calling the extended Lama lab test. 2 sections here where I go up the reverse epic KOM. It's a very steep little section of road, And the first few sections take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes each and are about the same kind of gradient. Right, what I'm seeing here is a very big difference in power in the small ring on the front, big cog on the back, and the Zwift hub is reporting around 20 watts low through this section through here. This section of road on Zwift seems to be the Bermuda Triangle of wattage. We saw the Kickr 6 drop a little low. We'll have a look at the Kickr Core in a little while, but it definitely was dropping power through here as I rode up that steep gradient. Now, a little bit of a rest through here, into the second section, about the same steepness, and that power gets a little closer. Then we drop down as we go around one of the corners, onto the next steeper grade, and the power gets a little better again. So what we're seeing here is a bit of inconsistency with the power coming from the Zwift hub. Power on the pedals and power on the Spider are very, very consistent through here, but the power reported as I continue to ride at that steep grade with the Zwift hub was changing. More data required, and yes, I have lots more data on this in a little while. And then another thing that was interesting that I wanted to test was the flywheel speed test in sim mode and the power reporting for that. This is this section through here where I've spun down and sailed down the reverse Epic KOM, and the Zwift hub is over-reporting power, specifically this zone here, 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 and I say and because it's a little bit through here, but mainly through here again. So there's 4 main zones where the Zwift hub was reporting, well, right here specifically 302 from the Zwift hub. I was only putting out 273 and 274 on the bike power meters. Looking at the flywheel speed of those specific sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all sections above 45 or 48 kilometers per hour on the physical flywheel speed on the unit, which was where the trainer was over-reporting power quite significantly. So through here, the tests outside that Goldilocks zone, so low flywheel speed, high power, and also high flywheel speed, the trainer, well, that's how it responded. Now back into the Goldilocks zone of flatlands and standard gearing, standard riding on the flats, and I did 2 tests here just to check things were in line when we were back on the flatlands. Here's a slow acceleration test with all 3 meters agreeing quite fine. So that's sort of simulating an attack or an acceleration in a race. That's all looking pretty good through there. And through here, a little attack or acceleration for around a minute or so. Clocking in near on 370, 380 watts. That's on the flats with what I would call a standard flywheel speed and gearing. And the power numbers look pretty good through here. The corresponding flywheel speeds from the trainer with both of those tests, the acceleration test, still came in under 45. And that 1 minute of around 370, 380 watts, again, that flywheel speed on the trainer wasn't exceeding 45 k's per hour. So kept everything within that Goldilocks zone and reporting correctly. And finally, in the Lama lab test, there's a little section that I loop back to at the end. This is something I've added recently to check if trainers shift during operation. This section through here, 2 minutes at 200, 2 minutes at 250 with no further spin downs. What we should be seeing is consistency from this little section through here and also with this here. So there's no spin downs, calibrations or anything performed, just riding and just putting the trainer through its paces. Just a quick reminder of the difference we saw here, 225, 224, 224 after that small drift there at the end. The numbers were looking pretty good early on. That was only 25 minutes into the ride with that 200 and 250 watt erg zone. Through here though, we see 232, 230 and 224. And the Zwift hub in red there is underreporting. Now it's exactly the same zones, exactly the same cadence, exactly the same everything else. The 2 power meters on the bike are in agreement, but it's the trainer that has changed. So was that a temperature thing? Well, the next test, I put a fan directly onto the trainer and performed almost exactly the same test. So Powered Max Engico, Asioma Duos, Zwift hub, same protocol with the warm up there at the start, into 200 and 250 watt steady state. This is with a fan blowing straight onto the trainer and the same consistency as before. However, you can see the drift early on, possibly because the trainer took longer to warm up and get itself to that optimal working zone of temperature, whatever that is. So probably a little cooler early on, and it was around 208, 207 watts here, and then locking down to where it should be here. And again, a small amount of drift early on, and locked into 250, probably underreporting just a little bit on that 250, but still within that plus or minus 2.5%. That's with a fan directly on the trainer. So a consistent response, but didn't solve the issue. Just quickly on the overs and unders, looking good. Flywheel speed tests, exactly the same results there. So good at slower flywheel speeds and low power. Higher flywheel speeds, it was underreporting a little bit. Massive flywheel speeds, over-reporting from the Zwift hub. What was interesting though is the up the hill test with the fan on the trainer, consistent with what we were seeing before. So dropping down there around 35 to 40 watts early on. And again, the next 90-second section, the power comes a little bit closer, same effort on the pedals. And the third section there, which before things almost came back into line, it's still a little bit off, indicating the trainer probably hadn't heated up enough to get within that optimal zone when there was that thermal change. Downhill again, over-reporting the same as before. So lots and lots of free watts downhills with that. Then again, looping back to the 200 and 250 watts, and we see pretty much exactly the same shift or offset change after an hour 10 of riding. So 231, 230.7, the trainer itself underreporting at 225. The conclusion there being that the fan on the unit changed things just a little bit, but didn't really fix all the issues that I was seeing. Data set number 3 really drills down into what may be happening on those steeper simulated gradients. Test number 1 is at 100% trainer difficulty. Test 2, 75% trainer difficulty, 50%, 25%, and back to 100% trainer difficulty. Now this was up the reverse epic KOM, and for simplicity's sake, let's just say that's an average of 10% gradient. So we have 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5, and back to 10. The power on the pedals remains the same, around 300 watts average for those little sections. Early on, we were seeing around 30 or so watts difference, and that was consistent with the previous tests. Up the 7.5% gradient, so 1 or 2 gears down, same cadence. The power comes a little closer again through here, and almost perfect through here. But a big concern was returning back to test number 1. I got different results after that 10 minutes of testing. So same power on the pedals, same gearing, same hill, same trainer difficulty setting, but different power coming from the Zwift hub. Something had changed. And I can only put that down to some thermal drift on the unit. On to data set number 4, where I use the power to max as the power source and the Zwift hub as the controllable cadence and heart rate monitor with its bridged connection. Now, a lot of people have asked in the past, can I go out and buy a smart trainer that doesn't have power, that costs me a lot less, and I'll BYO? This is exactly what Wahoo did with the roller. It doesn't have power. You've got a BYO for that unit. Now, using Power Match or a third-party power meter with a smart trainer usually introduces a little bit of lag and can change erg just a little bit, especially when it's trying to find that set point. But overall, it's usually a pretty good experience. Okay, how does that look using the Power to Max as the power meter? I'm still recording the power from the Zwift hub, but it's irrelevant to Zwift. All is looking pretty good. Standard operation. The purple line, which you can see behind things here, just drifts up a little bit as the number of truth just remains the same from the power meters on the bike. Sprints are fine, overs and unders fine. Look, I'll just do a quick summary of everything here. So overs and unders take a little bit longer to stabilize using a third-party power source. Flywheel speed tests are exactly what I'd expect, so things remain consistent. Good at a slower flywheel speed, lower power, higher flywheel speed, and at an extreme flywheel speed, because the power source is the pedals, I'm having to put out the real power, which the hub was over-reporting before. Now it's still over-reporting, but because the power meter is now the source of truth, the hub is reporting quite high. Steep simulated grade sim tests, exactly what we'd expect, reporting low through here, and flying down the hill too with a higher flow, it's over-reporting there as well. Looping back to the 200 and 250 watt, which was good through here, we'll just do a double check. 220, 219, 220, like 2 peas in a pod there. And then later on, we get 227, 227, 222 or 223. So again, the trainer has phase shifted its power just a little bit after 1 hour of usage. Data set number 5 was from a TrainerRoad workout, Sleeping Beauty -5, I think this one was. So yes, this trainer is compatible with TrainerRoad, and it's a great example of showing how the trainer itself early on is pretty much well off with power as it warms up. So the first 5 minutes here, you can see that slope coming down on the pedals. The trainer itself warms up and comes within spec. Between here and about here, it's all within spec, what I would call the Goldilocks zone. And then for the effort that I've done here, it starts to drift high a little. The easiest way to see it drift is the longer sections through here, which are only at 120 watts, but that's good through here. The trainer's over-reporting here, and as I get further into the session and things warm up, I guess, the trainer is again further over-reporting here, all the way along, even down here in the cool down. Now, it's not too far off, but you can see a change there in 3 sections here as the trainer warms up, here, which is in its optimal, I guess, operating temperature, and here when things get probably too hot. I guess the question is, will auto calibration solve the problems that we're seeing here? Zwift have mentioned they're working on it. Jet Black say they're almost ready to release it for their units. I really hope it does work, but I have my concerns, and here's why. This session wasn't just TrainerRoad. I did a lot more, so I'll zoom back out. Alrighty. Okay, so with the TrainerRoad portion and a few other little repeats tested here, here's the section that raises my concerns with auto calibration and what that may or may not be able to do with this unit. Okay, what we're seeing here, 50 minutes of usage of the Zwift hub and then returning back to 200 watt steady state. There is a small amount of drift by about 2 or 3 watts from 205 average through here down to about 203 average. So that's looking pretty good though. Look, yeah, call it a day, done. That's fine there. My concern though is the change we see right here. Again, exactly the same 200 watts erg, 200 watts erg, and the power reported from the trainer is lower. What took place? Well, I did a spin down of the trainer right here. Now, looping back to how kitchen scales work, returning them to the 0 set point, you hit tear or 0, and they nullify any weight on the scales. Same with the power meter, effectively. Once you auto zero those or calibrate them, they'll return you to a 0 set point. Smart Trainer Spin Down, on the other hand, tries to do the same sort of thing. And what I would have expected to see with a spin down right here is consistency with this, if not even bringing it right down to exactly 200, maybe 201. But it moves the other way. Doing a spin down on the trainer actually made it worse. Now, if auto calibration is going to be doing the same thing, bringing the trainer back to what it thinks is correct and does that. So I really do hope that auto calibration can resolve this one, but yeah, the results that I'm seeing means it's going to be a very, very big challenge for them to get right. It's probably worth mentioning right here that for $500, expecting a smart trainer to be as accurate as a set of Asioma Duos, Power to Max, maybe a Quark, is a big, big ask. If you're expecting that level of accuracy and consistency and reliability, you're probably looking at the wrong trainer at this point in time. Now onto something that I'm sure is going to be asked over and over again, probably worth me doing a whole video on it itself, but let's jam it into this one. The Hub versus the Kickr Core, two trainers that are almost identical on paper. Same max power, same max gradient, 2.5% power accuracy on the Zwift Hub, 2.0 on the Kickr Core. Let's have a look at the data on that. Kickr Core, same test, same everything else, steady state 200 into 250 watt. Very, very consistent. Slight bit of movement through here. So yes, I will put the Kickr Core to the sword on that. The real test will be, did it phase shift later on? That's all looking pretty good. Kickr Core in the sprints. The sprints on the core were never at strong point. So under-reporting just a touch through here. Something I'll loop back on if I do an extended review of this as a comparison. Overs and unders, flywheel speed test. Let's grab all that as one. Not too bad in the overs and unders. Taking a little while to stabilize for this section through here. I've done a ton of over and unders, so that does depend on how smooth you are on the pedals. But more interestingly enough is the flywheel speed test with the Kickr Core performs very, very differently to the Zwift Hub. Underreporting by around, what we're looking here, 10 watts through here. So overall, with that little section through there, probably around 10 to 12 watts. We did see the Zwift Hub over-reporting massively through here. So the Kickr Core performing a little better with the higher flywheel. Onto the steep gradient tests in both directions for the Kickr Core. And we have the Bermuda Triangle of missing watts through again, 36 on the front, 30 on the back. We're looking at about 10 watts difference through here early on. As things get a little further up the hill, a little closer again, that's looking good compared to what we were seeing before. As a reminder, that's what the Zwift Hub looked like through there, so not ideal. That looks much, much better through here. Downhill flywheel speed test in sim mode on the Kickr Core, not a problem at all. A little bit of differences through here and here, like really nitpicking. Again, very, very different experience on the Core, not over-reporting as we were seeing on the Zwift Hub. Then looping back again to the 200 and 250 watt to keep things honest at the end of that session. And aside from the power to max having a bit of a heart attack through here, no major separations, everything remains pretty good. The power to max reporting 220 there, so it's probably identical if you remove that little section through there. But no phase shifting on the Kickr Core, even after an hour 20 of riding. There's probably a reason for that. It has a thermal temperature sensor. Okay, so to summarize my experience with this trainer over the last 4 weeks, it's been quite the journey, and I've put this trainer probably through more tests than any other. before it. Strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, open connection standard. It's going to connect to any software that uses those open standards. ANT plus FEC, Bluetooth FTMS, that's great. Build quality, couldn't fault it, all fine with that. The cassette is supplied, you pick that on checkout. Zwift and I do disagree on the 12-speed compatibility with SRAM Axis flat top chains. They've said they've tested it and it works okay. They're confident to say their 12-speed cassette will work with Shimano and SRAM 12-speed. For me personally, I wouldn't be using a flat top chain on anything other than a cassette that's specifically designed for those larger rollers. I was looking for it, it's gone. Thanks, little Lama, he's taken that. All the tools are supplied with the trainer, that's great in the box. The ride feel is great, like turning the pedal over, had no problems with that. Sim mode, erg mode, performance were good, you saw that. What I was drilling down into though is the power reporting from those, but the actual feel in the legs was quite good. The heart rate bridge, as mentioned in my other videos, that's great for Apple TV users with those limited connections or just to simplify the connectivity. On TrainerRoad, all you need to do is pair one thing and you're done within the settings, that was great. So look, as an entry-level direct drive smart trainer, it's kind of hard to beat at the price, but that's where we lead to the weaknesses. Starting off with availability, only US, UK and EU markets only. It's also Zwift's first rodeo when it comes to distribution, hardware support and life cycle of something this complex. Now sure, they've done t-shirts and little running pods before, but smart trainers are a whole other game. It takes some companies many years to sort that out, and some still don't even get it right. One comment I may get a bit of pushback on, but it's worth saying because it's fact. This is dated technology. The Jet Black Volt version 1 and version 2 with its minor refinements are based on years old technology. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no pivoting rear axle on this thing, there's no dual Bluetooth connectivity at this point in time if you want to mix training platforms concurrently. With the heart rate bridge aside, the technical specifications are equivalent to the trainers that we were seeing on the market 4 to 5 years ago. The difference here is the price. Now, I don't think Zwift are making any mistake in how they're marketing that, but we just need to be clear. This trainer is not going to provide you the very best experience on the Zwift platform. It'll provide you a pretty good experience at a very good price, but there are better alternatives out there if money isn't a consideration. And finally, as we saw in the data there, the power consistency just isn't there with this trainer. It has that optimal working zone, but if it's too cold, it's not quite right. And after riding quite hard, something changes as well. It's just not the same as other trainers out there, likely due to the resistance in and the heat dissipation, but it is what it is. Alrighty, almost time to wrap this one up for today. It's been a very long video and a very long 4 weeks, so I tried to squeeze the most out of this trainer. Look, the experience with this trainer isn't anything new. It's just something at a different price point. And I think for Zwift, that's going to be box tick, job done. That's exactly what they were trying to do with this trainer. It performs surprisingly well for $500, but it's definitely not on par with other mid-range trainers such as the Kickr Core. That's not opinion, that's based on the data that you just saw before in the video. It comes close, and I'm really keen to see what they can squeeze out of this trainer with those firmware updates, and I'll be across them. But for now, if you're looking to buy this trainer, you'll need to make a decision based on the rider and the riding that you're doing. What watts are you putting out? What kind of accuracy and consistency are you after? Do you have a power meter on the bike already? And do you want to be an early adopter? That's all up to you to decide, or maybe just wait and see how it goes once these units start shipping today. I have no doubt it will do very well regardless of any review that's been published. Alrighty, and with that, that's a wrap on this video. If you've enjoyed this content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe to be alerted of new content on this channel, and we shall see you soon.